Welcome to today's webinar, Apple IT Trends for 2018. My name's Nick Thompson, and I'll be your host today. Let's take a look at our agenda. First off, we're going to do just a brief overview of Jamf, just to make sure everyone is familiar with who we are and what we do. Then we're going to take a look at some Apple IT accomplishments in 2017. We'll then look forward to the future and take a look at and make some predictions for Apple IT trends that could happen in 2018. We'll wrap up with some IT initiatives that you should consider, and of course we'll finish with some next steps. Let's take a quick overview of Jamf. This is our mission. We help organizations succeed with Apple. This is all that we focus on. This is all that we do. So we're experts on the Apple platform. How do we help organizations succeed with Apple? Well, we do so with our two products, Jamf Now and Jamf Pro. Now is really simple mobile device management, no IT required, where Pro is kind of the complete lifecycle management designed for IT professionals. Here you can see the two products side by side and the different features that they offer. Again, Now, all about easy, simple management. Pro, the entire lifecycle management of Apple devices, from deploying products, getting them configured, getting the appropriate apps on there, gathering inventory data, ensuring things are secure, and providing your users a unique way to get apps through a self-service catalog. Here's what both of the products look like from a user interface standpoint. You simply just log into a modern web browser and access the management tasks that you need to. Again, a little bit more about Jamf here. We help more than 12,000 organizations to manage over 8 million Apple devices. And that includes some of the large tech companies that are out there, the big marketing brands, and companies from the Fortune 500 and the most valuable brands out there in the world. Plus something, of course, that we're very proud of is all of the schools that we support too. Like I said, we've been doing this for a while. We only focus on Apple. And so you can see our track record here of supporting all of the new Apple releases whenever they come out with something new. The most recent case, of course, was with High Sierra and iOS 11 this fall, where we supported it right away. So enough about Jamf here. Let's take a look at 2017 in review. And let's take a look at some of the things that Apple has done that were significant from an IT perspective. Earlier in the year, of course, iPhone celebrated its 10th anniversary. So it's been amazing to see how long iPhone has been with us here already and how much of an impact it's made in over just 10 years. Earlier this spring, Apple also released some new MDM features for Apple TV. So this opened up the platform to be manageable and to allow IT administrators to configure this device through simple mobile device management commands and to set them up automatically thanks to Device Enrollment Program. Earlier in the spring, too, Apple had a number of different releases that was really all focused around education. So they came out with less expensive iPads, just called iPad now, and really aimed at the education market for that price point. They came out with Swift Playgrounds, a really wonderful app that allows students to learn programming in a really unique, interactive way. And they came out with some updates to Apple School Manager, which is a program specifically designed for education institutions to manage their devices, their apps, and their students as well, too. On the retail side of things, Apple rolled out this new program called Today at Apple, where customers can come gather together inside of the great Apple retail stores and learn all about the different products and features that they have to offer. They even have sessions specifically designed around business and using their Apple devices in business settings. Of course, we also saw some more enterprise agreements from Apple here. So in the past, of course, they've partnered with organizations like IBM and Cisco and SAP. This year, we saw them also partner now with GE and Accenture to create more routes to market for Apple devices and to really have both Mac and iOS be standards in the enterprise. Of course, the year is always revolving around the Worldwide Developer Conference, and this year was no exception to that either, where not only did they announce some new hardware like the iPad Pro, wonderful 10.5-inch screen device there that works great with the Apple Pencil, and they introduced new operating systems, High Sierra and iOS 11 and tvOS 11, but they also came out with new things that are important to IT. So they came out with some new MDM commands. They came out with new restrictions that are manageable by IT. The big headline thing, of course, was APFS, the new Apple file system that created some imaging considerations for IT administrators moving forward here. Major change on the file system. Of course, we also saw that Apple was completing their Apple Park and the new Steve Jobs Theater. Not necessarily IT focused, but it's always fun to see the big projects that Apple is doing. And of course, they consider this one of their biggest products in and of itself. And at that theater, we saw some new hardware that was released. The new iPhone X with Face ID and the great new cameras on there, and the new Apple Watch Series 3 that has cellular built right into it. Could be a sign of things to come. And last, we rounded out the year here with the new iMac Pro, a wonderful new piece of hardware that is incredibly fast and has some really interesting security features built into it too. More on that in a little bit. Again, from a MDM perspective, these were the things that we tracked out of WWDC this year, and that eventually made it into Jamf Pro as a product for you, the IT administrator, to configure and manage. Again, on the Mac side of things, all about APFS and coming out with different upgrade paths, doing some restrictions in there with AirPrint and deferring software updates. On iOS 11, being able to update all of your users to the new OS. Again, some more restrictions and some configurations in there. Big changes to tvOS, and the deployment programs had some nice updates to them as well too. Again, zeroing in on the Mac side of things, Apple File System, APFS, was the big headlining feature that had a lot of people wondering what this meant. And of course, this was brand new and introduced in 10.13 High Sierra. And from a Jamf side of things, we supported this right away in our 9.101 release that happened in the fall. And you can do reporting and you can do the standard in-place upgrades, but it had some changes related to imaging. And that was because of a couple of statements that Apple came out with. And one that I wanted to highlight here was on a knowledge base article. And you can see the knowledge base article number there in the corner. But it said, you must be connected to the internet when you upgrade your Mac OS. And this is because when you went from Sierra to High Sierra, Mac OS talked to Apple's servers and it downloaded a number of firmware updates, not just to prepare your Mac for APFS, but also to update things like EFI and the USB-C controllers and the SMC power management controllers as well too. All of these were very, very crucial when going from Sierra to High Sierra. So you can't just do monolithic system imaging anymore when doing an upgrade. It has to be connected to the internet and talking back to Apple servers to get all of this. Which is why we also provided some great upgrade paths that users can, that our administrators can follow along here, where you could decide to block macOS High Sierra if you wanted to using Jamf Pro, but if you didn't want to, you could move on and if you wanted to do traditional sort of imaging techniques, net install still continued to work, but we encouraged a lot of our customers to go different routes, either having having the package installer be placed into self-service. The users can just one-click install it, or have IT just push out the High Sierra upgrade, or just simply allow your users to get it from the Mac App Store. Either way, lots of different upgrade paths, and we had a whole webinar dedicated specifically to the different upgrade paths on High Sierra. Looking just a little bit internally here as well too, here were some of the releases that Jamf Pro had over 2017 to support all of the great things that Apple did. Again, the Apple TV management features here in the spring, along with the Apple School Manager enhancements that happened shortly after that. Right before the summer releases, there were some security enhancements to Mac OS, as well as some iOS enhancements that allowed you to require an iPad actually be connected to a Mac in order to receive certain commands. So great for cart-based scenarios if you're using those sort of solutions. Of course, again, we had the Apple OS fall release, and this fall saw the new Jamf Pro 10 with its new user interface, self-service, and patch management. And we had a great other release that just happened a few days ago here with the Microsoft Intune integration that allows you to take all of your inventory data from Jamf Pro and share it to Microsoft Intune so that you can apply conditional access on there. So it's been a busy 2017, lots of things happening from Apple, and Jamf going right alongside Apple, providing the different management tools to manage all of the great things that came out. So let's change focus now, and let's take a look forward to 2018 and what could happen here. So I've broken these down into a couple of different categories that I want to make predictions for 2018. And the first prediction that I want to talk about relates to security, and specifically security on Mac OS. So the iMac Pro, which was just released a few days ago here, is really what we believe is a sign of things to come. For those who aren't familiar with the iMac Pro, there's a new chip in there. It's the T2 chip, which is the second generation of the chip that was found on the Touch Bar MacBook Pros. And this really enables a true security system. So just like System Integrity Protection, or SIP, you could go into a special boot mode on Mac OS, and you could choose what sort of security model you want. By default, this ships with full security enabled. So what that means is when it boots up for the first time, or when it boots up at all, it always checks back to Apple's servers to ensure that a signed operating system is running on the device. This is critically important, and it makes it very, very similar to how iOS behaves, where you're not able to install an older operating system on iOS devices. macOS would behave very, very similar here, and that's how it behaves on the iMac Pro. Now, it is a feature you can go into the settings and disable for now, but we really see this as a sign of things to come, and it also means that you will not be able to image an iMac Pro. In fact, the only way to do a full system restore on an iMac Pro is to hook it into Apple Configurator, just like you would an iOS device, which is pretty interesting to see. So, macOS security in 2018 we think is going to continue to get stronger, and is going to look more like iOS, which means time to say goodbye to imaging. All right. Our second topic that we want to look forward to here in 2018 has to do with IoT, or the Internet of Things. And of course, Apple makes a lot of things that happen to connect to the Internet as well too. So I want to focus in on the Internet of Apple things. We saw the delay of HomePod, which is Apple's new Siri-enabled speaker, which really runs its own version of iOS, and will be able to communicate to all of your devices and behave just like Siri normally would, except in a contained device here. And Apple TV continues to be a really important feature of Apple, where you see it acting, again, more like a dedicated device that has management capabilities in and of itself. The Apple Watch Series 3 has built-in networking, has its own built-in LTE networking, so that it can start to act more independent of itself. And you saw all of these HomeKit integrations starting to emerge, where, again, Apple created this ecosystem and the standard called HomeKit, which allows connected devices in your home to communicate securely to your iPhone or your Apple TV. And where we see this going in the future is that there's the possibility of having more manageability of these devices. You see it right now with Apple TV, where it has its own dedicated MDM commands for it. We don't know yet what HomePod will have in terms of MDM. And right now, Apple Watch is still dependent on an iPhone. But you can imagine a future where Apple continues to make these things that are connected to the internet that operate independent of what we know as a computer today. Not a Mac, not an iOS device, but something else that would contain manageability to it. So something to keep an eye on here in 2018 and beyond. The next two 2018 predictions have to do with different markets. And the first market I want to focus in on is education. This is where we believe that Apple is going to continue investing in and continue pushing forward as an important market. We believe that they're really going to take an iOS-first approach to this, where they are putting out hardware specifically aimed at the education market, and maybe not called like an eMac, like the old eMac was, but iPad hardware that is really at a good price point for education. We also see them doing more things with Swift Playgrounds, really leveraging their expertise in programming and partnering with organizations like Women Who Code and Code Hour as well, to push forward the idea of computer science and programming among younger generations here. So we have really great software here in the future. And we believe that you'll see management be continually tailored for education. You see it with Apple School Manager, where it's a dedicated platform specifically for schools that has things like SIS integration, managed Apple IDs, shared iPad. All of these we see Apple expanding in the future and making it more specific to education. So really cool market that we believe that Apple will continue to focus on. The other channel here, of course, is the enterprise, and we see a couple of things continuing on in 2018. 2017 was, and really 2016 was the years of user choice programs. We saw it with IBM being the flagship example of a user choice program in the enterprise. 2017, a lot of organizations were starting to also introduce user choice programs, and we believe that 2018 is going to really continue that trend, where if you're not offering user choice programs to your users, you're losing out on attracting top talent. You're losing out on productivity for your employees, and you're almost behind the wave of what modern organizations are starting to do. And of course, we see this being driven by the changing demographics in the workforce. You see millennials coming in and wanting to use the products that they're most familiar with. They want to use a Mac that they're comfortable on. And we see Apple also coming out with new enterprise partnerships. You saw it last year or this year here with GE and Accenture. You can just tell that they will continue to push that forward and continue to add new partnerships with different enterprise organizations. You also see this concept coming out of co-management with different Windows tools. And this is something that Microsoft is actually pushing with Microsoft Intune. And it relates to an integration that we just happened to come out with a few days ago called our Microsoft Intune integration, which allows you to take all of your Mac inventory data and transfer it into Intune. Actually, just share it with Intune so that you can do conditional access for the Mac. That means all of your Office 365 data or anything that requires Azure AD for authentication can now be gated and can be protected so that if the Mac is not secure enough, it won't have access to those resources. Of course, then we want to also provide a user-friendly way to remediate that Mac too in case it's not up to security standards. So what does that look like? Well, I'm just going to take you through a quick integration architecture of how this plays out. So you have your Mac on the left here, and you have all your company resources in the cloud all the way on the right. First off, this Mac is managed by Jamf. Then you will register this Mac with Intune. And you do this through a process known as Workplace Join. It's a really simple process that you as the IT administrator can automate for your users. Then, after configuring a few settings in both Jamf Pro and Intune, you can have that inventory data be shared into your Intune instance. It will then evaluate all of the compliance rules that you set up inside of there, and Azure AD will enforce conditional access to your resources. So if your computer is secure enough, then you will be allowed access to anything that's in your cloud. Of course, if it's not secure enough, it's going to block access for non-compliant devices, and it's going to provide a user-friendly remediation experience. And that remediation experience is all done through self-service. Users can just click one button, and it will fix their Mac and bring it up to your security standards to allow them access to their resources in the cloud. Okay. So those were our predictions, again, around macOS security, Internet of Things, education focus, and continued growth in the enterprise. So what are some IT initiatives for you to consider here in the next year? Well, Apple devices are coming, and you can either choose to ignore it or you can choose to embrace it. A couple of notes: you can't just apply your Windows processes to the Mac. It's a different process altogether, and you want to take an Apple approach to managing Apple devices. Note too that maybe not all of your users are going to be comfortable on a Mac, and so that's why it is important to offer user choice and not just make it the standard, but rather offer true choice to say do your users want a Mac or a PC? And of course, Apple makes this easier for us to do now and easier to manage these devices in the enterprise and in education settings. So what are some practical ways for you to prepare for more devices? Well, here are a couple of options or a couple of categories for you to consider. Look at your infrastructure. Look at either your Jamf Pro servers or any other servers in your environment, and look at moving them to the cloud so that you would have a more lightweight management experience there. If you haven't already, sign up for the device enrollment program. Sign up for the volume purchase program. These are two great programs that will help you automate your device setup and automate pushing out apps to your devices. If you haven't started using self-service, consider using it. Jamf Pro 10 introduced a brand new version of self-service that is completely brandable for you. So you can make it your own. It doesn't have to look like it comes from Jamf. It can look like it comes from Acme or whatever your company name is. It's a wonderful tool, super easy to set up for your users. Look at some of these security improvements that you can start to make. 2017, we saw a lot of security patches that needed to be pushed out to devices. How can you more quickly react to them, and how can you quickly push them out to your devices? Look for integrations. We talked about the Microsoft Conditional Access integration that just came out with Jamf, but also look to other areas where you can integrate Jamf into. And we have a brand new marketplace that you can find integrations for. Check out marketplace.jamf.com. And of course, look at improving your Wi-Fi conditions. This is always an important one. Apple and Cisco have done some amazing work in iOS 11 and macOS High Sierra that let you enable something called Fast Lane for your Apple devices. So consider looking at some of their Wi-Fi hardware and implementing some of their software features that are all manageable via MDM. I wanted to point out one example here before closing out, and this is from Culture Amp. Culture Amp had a really wonderful presentation at our Jamf Nation User Conference this year. And just to cover on some of the highlights here, they really wanted to focus on the end user. They wanted to focus on the end user experience and what it was like to boot up the Mac for the first time and to really go through the setup process. And it even included how do they order the Mac as well too. And they did that by creating some standards within their organization. They created standards around how accounts are created. They did standards of what sort of device is ordered. They did standards around naming conventions. Really helped them in the future when they started rolling out a lot of new Macs en masse. Of course, they leveraged automation points with Jamf Pro and other tools, and they used some great integrations. The screenshot that I'm showing here on the screen is them leveraging the Splash Buddy integration. So Splash Buddy essentially takes over after the DEP process and presents the user a little bit of information about what's actually happening in the background. So as they're installing Slack and Chrome and applying file vault settings, it's explaining to the end user what's actually happening on their device. And they were able to just integrate that with the Jamf Pro process. And they found that integration right on our marketplace. Again, marketplace.jamf.com. Highly recommend checking out their JNUG video. Check out their video just by navigating to our videos here and look for the JNUG video called Culture First Onboarding. Great example of an organization leveraging Jamf Pro to automate a lot of the things to provide a much better user experience. Okay, let's recap here. Today we really just talked about Jamf Pro and the predictions that we're making here for 2018. Again, if you're not familiar with everything that Jamf Pro can do, you can really automate those deployments of Apple devices thanks to some zero-touch deployments. You can configure all of the different settings that need to be on your devices. You can push the appropriate apps out to them, gather extensive inventory data, and then with that inventory data, take action on your devices. You can make sure that they're secure, and you can provide your users a unique way to get apps that they need without having to bug IT thanks to a self-service app catalog. On technical side of things, the Jamf Pro server can either be cloud hosted or you can run it on premise. We've got data centers across the globe for you to do your cloud hosting. If you do that, it's easy because it's automatically upgraded anytime we come out with new updates, and we use AWS as our infrastructure. If you choose to run it on-premise, it works on a Linux, Windows, or Mac OS server. It's just a MySQL database talking to Tomcat. And of course, we integrate with all the different things that Apple does. We talked about device enrollment program and volume purchase program and Apple School Manager. But of course, we also work with the Apple push notification service, which is kind of the background technology that makes all of this work by establishing trust between Jamf and all of your client machines. And we work great with all of the different third-party integrations out there. So whether you're just doing directory services or if you need to integrate with your single sign-on provider, Microsoft System Center, and the new Intune integration that we were just talking about, Cisco ICE and Cisco Fastlane that I mentioned, talking about Wi-Fi infrastructure there, ServiceNow for doing business intelligence data, and we've got an extensive API if you want to build your own things. Again, I mentioned it a few times earlier here. The Jamf Marketplace lists all of the integrations that are available out there, so you can check it out, learn what's available, and choose tools to integrate in your Jamf platform. Some next steps, contact us to get started. We are always wanting to talk to you further about how this can integrate with your specific environment. So just go to jamf.com and reach out to us. Check out some of our other webinars that we've done in the past. Lots of great resources there for you. And finally, check out Jamf Nation. 50,000 IT members are a part of Jamf Nation. It's totally free and open. You can check out all the different discussion forums about different aspects of managing Apple devices. Highly encourage you to check it out. With that, I want to thank everyone, and that concludes our presentation.